Another day.
Metro.
Another nickel.
Day Metro is another split that is stacked with different strats, movement options and even routes. Let's find out what fits your current level and where you can improve. I'm Danster and this is Change of Pace for Day Metro.
Climbing out of the trenches, reaching for higher heights.
Chasing me along, all I want is you when we was chasing time.
Well, I am the boss, I am the dawn, I am the one they call.
I ain't got much to explain though. But then I was running for bangos. I was the minimum wage though.
If you haven't watched the introduction video, make sure to check it out to understand how this series works. As a quick summary, there will be different strats for different skill levels. The lower ones will be the base for the higher ones. If you're feeling confident though, that you already know the strats for a pace, feel free to check the timestamps to find the skill level that fits you best. Now, let's get moving.
I'm just a kid with a glimmer of hope. I'm just a kid with a kid and potential to glow.
As always, our first pace is meant for runners with a PB of 104 or 105 who are aiming towards a sum of best of roughly 103 flat. And right at the start you might have a bit of a déjà vu. Just like in Night Metro, it helps a lot to turn the camera before you start moving. To do that, keep holding right on the right stick while skipping the cutscenes and mashing through the dialogue. Afterwards, you should now be able to adjust the camera so you face the ramp. This will make moving onto it easier. Spin pound and do 4 roll boosts. Then jump onto the higher platform, double jump and throw KP towards the pylon. Hold him out with one of the capture buttons, then turn towards the Girder entrance. Walk in, turn towards the moon and roll into it using the other cap throw button. Optimally, you want to shake the controller before touching the moon so you get the dram sooner. For me, it works perfectly to do the first roll with the button you're not currently holding, followed by shaking the controller to get a roll boost. Cappy will home in with a good timing if you do that. But obviously that comes with a risk of doing it too early and missing the moon. Figure out what timing for the shake works best for you, so you do it decently early without jamming back before collecting the moon. Now, when moving down, there's some easy timesave you can get from turning the camera. Due to a lot of things being loaded when moving into the main part of the kingdom, usually a bunch of frames will be dropped. By turning the camera top to bottom, you can reduce that lag since less stuff is being loaded. So remember to always do that. Dive out of the wire and start rolling towards the scooter. You know what is coming next. It's time to learn Scoot Clip if you haven't. Around 104 or 105 is definitely a good time to add it to your inventory. Even without drive-by it saves multiple seconds, so let's have a look at what is a good setup and how to perform the clip. First of all, you can mount the scooter by just roll boosting onto it. No need to jump or cancel the roll. Next, it's important to know that this clip uses a motion control and without it, it won't be possible. By turning the controller left and right, you will see that this makes the scooter tilt slightly in the respective directions. This will allow Mario's hitbox to extend and touch the moon inside the cage. We want the scooter to tilt as far left as possible, and most people, in order to do that, turn the controller not only left, but really left. Like really, yeah, upside down pretty much. Holding the controller like that will feel very unnatural and awkward at first, so you're probably wondering when to turn it and how long you have to hold that posture. The tilt is only necessary for the clip, so you can initiate it whenever you want beforehand. Still, doing it mid-movement is even more awkward, so it's a good idea to start holding the controller like that once you mount the scooter. Then, after collecting the moon, you can go back to holding the controller like a normal person. Or you can try to do the rest of Day Metro like this as well. Who knows what you're into? Now, let's see how to set this clip up. Generally, there are 3 common ways of doing Scoot Clip. The fastest is drive-by, which is not recommended to do if you're just learning this clip. It's the hardest and most risky way, and we will look at it in one of the later paces. The other 2 methods use a setup. The first one makes use of the cage directly. Bonk into the front side, but as far right as possible without taking risk of missing the cage. Now slide along the cage further right until you finally go past it, but as close to its right side as possible. Now it's important to react quickly and with the right timing. Flick the control stick to the left, and if you timed it correctly, Mario will clip in and grab the moon. There are a couple of things that can go wrong here. Again, timing is key, and also being very close to the cage. It's definitely important that you know how to do this method of clipping, since it's also the fastest way of backing up in case you miss. Just reposition yourself and try again. The clip works on any side of the cage. That's also important to keep in mind for the backup. This clip is a great example for a trick that really needs to get into your muscle memory. You don't want to think about the timing or actually react to the moment you're slipping past the cage. Practice it extensively so you do it almost automatically once you're on the cage. The second method is already preparing you for drive-by. It lets you set up your angle a little sooner so you won't actually bonk into the cage. When performed well, this will be a bit faster than the first method, and additionally you will have an easier time later when learning the advanced strat. The developers added a very helpful visual cue here. If you're looking at the right side of the cage, the place where we want to clip, you will realize that there's a line on the ground coming directly out of there. It pretty much shows us exactly where the right side of the cage is, even if we're still far away from it. This line will guide you to the clipping spot. You want to be slightly right of it and drive parallel to it. Now, doing that without stopping at all would be the actual drive-by method. We are not going to do that though and let the scooter once again bonk into something that is also on that line. So stick to driving slightly right of the line, then bonk into the little railing of the RC car course. Make sure the camera is centered behind you, and now you can make sure you're really aiming in the right direction towards the clipping spot. You can make slight adjustments, and once you think you're facing the right way, jump over the railing. Optimally, you can hold neutral on the stick now and only flick to the left once you're next to the cage. Again, getting the timing into your muscle memory is crucial. Decide for yourself which method you want to go for in runs. I would say definitely learn the first method because of the backup purpose I mentioned. Once you're consistent with it, give the second method a shot and see how it goes. It can be very fast if you get good at it, and eventually you can transition to drive-by quite easily from it. After collecting the moon, don't dismount the scooter but steer it to the right of the awning. Jump, then dismount at the peak, and you will have enough height to make it onto the awning with another cap throw to the left. Capture the pole with a homing cap throw, then shake and cancel the launch with another cap throw and dive to the right. Center the camera, jump and dive. Jump again and ground pound to reveal the moon. The dram towards the moon saves a little bit of time, and it doesn't hurt if you want to try to get used to it already. The tricky part is that you have to turn the camera towards the capture so that it's on screen, but in order to save time you have to do that while moving toward the trash moon and revealing it. So whenever your right thumb isn't busy pressing any buttons, use it to turn the camera. You can also just center the camera towards the pole after ground pounding if you prefer that. It's a bit tricky for sure, but you will get used to it after practicing it for a while. Once you ground pounded the moon, jump and move towards the pole. Then cap throw at the peak, and again hold cappy out with one cap throw button, then turn back to the moon and dive into it using the second cap throw button. If you did everything correctly, you should now have the camera face the pole and cappy, and you can just shake to home in and capture. This is probably a good point to mention that you can also influence the direction of the homing by the direction you're shaking the controller. If you're shaking towards the right, cappy will most likely home in that direction, which can be helpful here. Fling Mario towards the bench and optimally land onto it directly. If you realize that you won't land in the correct spot, do a cap throw to adjust. Once you're in the correct spot, make sure to neither move Mario nor the camera, as both will stop Mario from sitting down immediately. Just leave the controller as it is, and once Mario starts the animation of sitting down, you're good and you can actually go for a small timesave using a camera manip. Before the dialogue happens, the camera will pan into a certain position, facing the bench from the front. To make this animation shorter, you can assist it by turning the camera towards there manually. So again, wait until Mario starts sitting down, then turn the camera to the left. Afterwards, mash through the dialogue and collect the moon. For the next part, the taxi cycle can sometimes block your way. Depending on how fast you did the beginning, it will be there or not. So let's look at both scenarios. If it isn't there, spin pound towards the pole and roll cancel into it. Then flick it so Mario goes in the right direction. Note that poles can also be flicked using a shake, but we won't look at that for now as it is harder to control. Just use the left stick. Using the pole doesn't save much time over just rolling, so that's what we're going to do instead if the taxi is there. Just spin pound to the left, center the camera and roll boost towards the girder. This will almost always be the faster option than trying to maneuver around the taxi awkwardly to somehow still capture the pole. Now jump, break the top left crate with jump and cap throw, then when you're on the lower crate, just roll into the girder. Roll boost and roll cancel to the left around the corner, then roll into the moon. Now spin pound and run around the corner. Start rolling and roll boost 3 times, then do a long jump out of the hole in the crates. 3 roll boosts should normally set you up to do the long jump at the right time, but if you're struggling with that, you might want to adjust the number of boosts. Try to time another shake off the top of the crate and center the camera. Then capture the next pole with a regular cap throw or a spin throw. Flick towards where Pauline is, then keep running forwards until you're close enough to the next pole to capture it with another spin throw. Flick again and talk to Pauline. Then spin pound towards the drummer and talk to him as well. After the story moon cutscene, spin pound and roll out of the city hall. Spin pound again and make sure to not bonk into the plant pot. Then roll boost towards the pylon and roll cancel to capture it. At the end of the wire, dive, jump, cap dive and ground pound the wiggler segment. Jump and, while you're waiting for the moon to become collectible, turn the camera to the left so you can dive instantly after the moon cutscene. Talk to the bassist and collect the moon. Now warp to the top of the tower. You can open the map and warp sooner than you think, pretty much right after the story moon fadeout happened. Try listening to the sounds to time the map opening. At the top, jump and dive, then turn right and jump and dive again towards the edge. Long jump, cap dive, cap throw, home in to open the bin and dive onto it. Then try to grab the moon as high as possible by timing a full height single jump. Also, while waiting for the moon to become grabbable, make sure the camera is facing the right way. A helpful visual cue can be the bridge in the background. You want Mario to be lined up with the leftmost support beam. After the moon, instantly dive forward while holding neutral. That way, you will go the furthest. Center the camera and now adjust the direction with the control stick so you don't miss the moon. All of this is quite risky, so only go for this if you're confident you grab the trash moon high enough and your diving angle is good. Otherwise, do a cap dive instead and drop down. That way you will have more control over Mario and can further adjust the direction he's going. Or you could just do a cap throw before diving to give a little more distance, whichever you prefer. After the next moon, cap dive and dive towards the pylon and capture it with a spin throw. Okay, I don't have to tell you that trying to get to the top of the tower can be a pain. We have all experienced that. But if you're still struggling with this part quite often, it's definitely time to get comfortable and consistent with some movement. The biggest difficulty for many is getting from the pylon up to the point where you grab onto the peak. So let's have a look at the 2 ways that are commonly used to get there. The arguably slightly easier version makes use of only backflips. Once you pop out of the wire and land, keep holding neutral on the left stick. That's very important and will be the same for the second method as well. This will perfectly set you up for the right angle to make it all the way to the top. Backflip and dive at the peak. Then repeat that another 2 times and you're already done. Well, it sounds pretty simple. Unfortunately, the timing for these dives is quite precise. Keep in mind that the rhythm for all of them is pretty much the same. Once you get used to it, the climb will be a lot easier. The second method is the same in the second half, but in the beginning we will do a ground pound jump instead. Again, keep holding neutral on the left stick during all of this. Once you pop out of the wire, ground pound instantly, jump and cap throw. Do a neutral cap bounce, then cap throw and dive. It's important to know that you will end up too high if you get maximum height out of all these inputs. So you can't delay everything, but you have to tighten up some inputs in order to have the right height. It's definitely more difficult to get used to a rhythm here, but some people still prefer this method. Either way, find the method that is the most consistent for you. After the second dive, backflip and dive again. Now you will either grab onto the tower or you will land on this small ledge. Landing on the ledge is a little more optimal as you want to do another backflip and dive onto the grabbable side of the tower. If you grab onto the tower after the first backflip, make your way up to the higher pole by doing the jump, cap throw and dive twice. If you manage to get the second backflip, you only need to do the jump, cap throw and dive once to get onto the higher part of the antenna. Once you land, immediately jump off again, do a fast cap throw and dive so Cappy isn't even visible. And again, instantly jump. This time, wait a bit before the cap throw so Cappy is visible, then dive so you get a cap bounce. If you spaced out everything correctly, you will now be very close to the peak. Climb the remaining bit and jump into the moon. If you did everything correctly, Cappy should come back from the cap jump right when you're at the top and do the jump, resulting in Mario doing a rainbow spin and grabbing the moon that way. This will set Mario up perfectly to potentially do a spin pound on top of the antenna. We are not going to recommend that at this time, but practicing the movement to technically make it work is a good idea. Tower climb is 100% worth some practice. It can lose you a bunch of time if you mess it up, as backing it up can be quite weird and hard. So make sure to practice this difficult movement until you're confident in it. After the moon, cap dive and dive towards the pool and collect the moon. To be in the right position for the next part, try to grab it around here on the front right side. Optimally, you want Mario's shadow to be on the hint art spot already, so you can instantly ground pound afterwards. After revealing the hint art, jump and immediately cap throw and dive to the left. Jump over the railing and keep holding left. Then ground pound once you think you're above the right spot. There really isn't much to explain here, this is all about getting a feel for the right timing. And at this level you can definitely start to learn it. Even if you miss it, it won't lose you much time and you will get more and more used to it, which will be useful muscle memory for later. If you miss the moon, just ground pound jump, cancel it with a cap throw towards the right spot and ground pound again to reveal the moon. After the cutscene, cap dive, turn towards the entrance of people room and dive towards it once you're close to the ground. Then roll or simply walk in. Once you're able to move, jump and instantly cap throw towards the lever. Then keep turning Mario's angle so you can dive forward in the direction where the moon is. Home into the lever and start rolling. To avoid getting stuck in the people, try to roll along the right wall where you won't bump into any of them. With the cycle you're on, there will also open up a gap in the right moment once you get to the entrance where the people are coming from. Go through it and stop rolling in time to jump into the moon. Dive forward and center the camera. Now jump and dive onto the awning. Hold to the right and at the peak throw Cappy and dive onto the next awning. Grab onto the pole, jump forward, then before touching the next one, dive to skip it and grab onto the last one instead. Flink forward and instantly dive into the moon when you land. Now just warp back to the Odyssey and you're done with Metro. The Metro is quite tough once you start learning more advanced movement. A good goal you can aim for would be a 432. If you want to push towards a 2x, that's definitely also possible with these threads. But to make it easier, you might want to look at the next part once you're ready for it. Here's a change of pace.
When the time is right, then you should make a move. Hope it ain't taboo.
Now, let's move on to strats for people with a 102 or 103 PB who are going for a SOP of 101 flat. The first thing is a reminder to improve your scoot clip. For example, if you're doing drive-by and you're not very consistent, make sure you're timing your stick flick correctly by practicing the trick. By getting a feeling of the timing of the clip, by not going too early or too late, you can save the time it takes to reset up the clip. Now, moving on to the dram now. Home in Cappy shortly before grabbing the moon, so that he will capture the pole almost instantly after the animation ends. Figure out the timing for the shake and get used to it. After we have done dram and received our moon from bench friends, we're going to capture the pole and start shaking the controller to launch Mario out of the pole. This is faster than aiming the pole manually. For that, it's first important that you understand how poles generally handle a shake input. You might have wondered what determines Mario's direction for the fling because it can seem a bit arbitrary. The answer is quite simple though. What matters is Mario's position when capturing the pole. You will be launched in the opposite direction of where Mario was when the capture happened. This means if we want to move towards here, you have to stand roughly on this line when Cappy moves into the pole. It doesn't need to be exactly there, but you want to avoid deviating too much since you can otherwise easily be flung into the wall and lose all your speed. So when roll cancelling towards the pole, try to do it in a good position and stay there until the capture has happened. Now that has been said and done, it's time for the movement after the Girder mode. Once you're out of the Girder, try to spin through a roll cancel into the pole and try out the new pole shakes. Also, try to talk to Pauline as well as the other NPCs in first person. This was explained in more detail in Change of Pace for Wooded, so make sure to watch that back. As a brief summary, let the camera be in a line with both Mario and the NPC. Stand in front of the NPC but not too close, then go into first person. Also remember that remapping the right control stick press to an actual button will save you some additional time. First person only very rarely saves time here for some reason, but it doesn't lose time if you go for it, so why not try. After the warp, cap throw and dive forward but slightly right and buffer a spin pound. Then roll on the platform in the direction of the trash bin. Once the roll ends, do a full height single jump close to the edge. In order to get enough distance to reach the other side, you want to vector this single jump. Try to aim the jump not directly towards the bin but slightly left or right of it. Whilst Mario is in air, turn towards it, make sure to not throw Cappy too early as you want to delay for a bit until you're close enough, then throw Cappy, cap bounce, cap throw, home in and dive onto the girder. Then try to grab the moon high and as soon as possible. You can do that by turning around and backflipping or by buffering a spin during the final dive, and then spin jumping into it. Also, remember to turn the camera if necessary to face the right way so you can dive instantly. A visual cue was explained in the previous pace. On top of the tower, try to implement the spin pound now. For that, it's really important that you are right above the tip when grabbing the moon. The rainbow spin setup explained previously will help with that. Pay attention to Mario's shadow, which will be a great indicator. Now you can buffer a spin pound during the moon cutscene. If it is successful, it will give you enough distance to move into the moon without any additional cap throws or dives. After the cafe moon, try to cap throw and dive in an angle that lets you land on the railing. Depending on where you grab the moon, this can vary a bit. Now simply walk off the railing, avoid the sign, then turn towards the entrance. Dive, roll boost, and although the game would really try to make you, don't bonk but roll in. It's easier said than done, I know. If you're not sure that you will roll into it without bonking, do a roll cancel jump into the room to avoid any potential bonks. People room remains the same as previously. With these new strats, you can try to lower your gold to at least a 424. That's what I would recommend for the SOB goal. You know what I would also recommend? You coming back to this video once you're at a higher level and ready for the next pace.
Hurry up quick, El Jefe's coming soon. Sit up straight when she enters the room.
This pace is meant for runners with a 100 or a 101 PB who are going for a SOB of 59 flat. The first change is a big one already. We're going to implement drive-by now. There were already a couple of more basic explanations on Scoot Clip in the 105-104 pace, so give that a watch as well. The thing is, as much as I wish there was some amazing trick that makes drive-by a lot easier, the reality is that there really isn't that much to it. It comes down to driving to the right spot on the cage and timing leaning into it correctly. This is obviously quite precise and probably especially difficult if you so far only learned the clip by bonking into the cage and sliding past it. To get used to the right timing, practice with the other method introduced earlier. Line yourself up with the right side of the cage on the little railing, then jump over it and lean into the cage. Once you got that part down, start working on the rest. Figure out how to move from mounting the scooter to the clipping spot without stopping. Once again, the line on the floor is a decent visual cue. One tip I can give you is trying to be in a line with the right side of the cage as early as possible so you have time to make very slight adjustments on the rest of the way moving there. Drive-by is a trick that isn't learned in a matter of minutes. Make sure to spend enough time practicing it because losing a lot of time or the whole run here can happen so easily. One small thing to note is that you should try to jump over the little railing when doing drive-by. It is very easy to just land on the railing, which on most cases will be fine, but sometimes it just gives you a very weird high and far bounce, meaning you overshoot the spot where Mario should be leaning into the moon. My best advice is to just try to avoid the railing entirely. There aren't many changes for the next few moons, just make sure to go for the spin throw roll cancel after bench friends now. After the Girder moon, spin pound, then keep spinning the stick. The roll will end and Mario will enter the spinning stage again, right in the corner of the Girder, which is quite convenient. Go for another spin pound and one more roll boost. Then, once the roll ends, jump and dive out of the gap on the crates. Alright, something which isn't too common for this video series is about to happen. Route change time! Bullet building time! Replacing the slow musicians and this moon by slots and the bullet build sub area will save a few seconds. And although this route is quite a bit more difficult and risky, it's definitely worth implementing in your runs at a 101 or 100 PB. After diving out of the Girder, spin pound towards slots, run towards the entrance and roll in. The goal is to get slots with just a single spin throw, and to make this as easy as possible, aim for the top side of the carpet. You want to end up in this rough area. Also, keep in mind that you can already start moving when the screen is still black. When you're first learning slots, it's fine to simply walk to the spot and talk to the NPC. Once you feel more comfortable, you can start going for a roll and a roll cancel to save some extra time. While mashing through the dialogue, pay attention to a few things. First of all, you want to be ready for afterwards. There will be 2 text boxes, then a little menu text where you can pick between 2 answers, and then another text box. Once you're past the menu text, start holding towards the leftmost slot and be ready to spin throw. You want to time skipping the final text box with an A press so you don't get a jump afterwards. This isn't the end of the world though, and slots will most likely still work if it happens. Now, let Mario take a step and spin throw. When Mario is at the corner of the carpet, you're definitely close enough to hit the left slot, so that is a nice visual cue. Instantly after spin throwing, turn Mario towards the slots on the right. This makes sure you get all of them. Cappy will also hit them on the second spin in case you missed one. By the way, both clockwise and counterclockwise spin throws will work here, but a clockwise one feels a lot more natural and less risky. Now, if you followed all the steps, the moon should spawn and you just have to be ready to collect it. Try to be as close to the exit as possible when grabbing it. Notice the 2 lighter tiles. Stand right on top of the left edge when waiting for the moon, then jump into it while holding neutral. Now hold down and dive out. Unfortunately, this wasn't the hardest part about this route. The sub area coming up is what makes it especially difficult. But let's move there first. Spin pound, then roll cancel towards the pole and home in. Usually you should capture it from a position that lets you make use of a shake for the flame. Keep running for a bit and avoid the lantern that will always try really hard to be exactly in your way. For an optimal line, you want to go left of it, but sometimes you don't really have a choice here. Then aim for the entrance and start roll boosting towards it. Make sure to start rolling early enough when you still have all of your speed from the pole shake. That way you will also roll faster for a while. Alright, time for bullet building. There are a bunch of things that can go wrong here, starting with the poles that you have to climb at the start. As you will know, these poles like to do everything but never what you intend. And here you're confronted with 3 of them. Good news is that the movement you're about to learn is actually quite consistent as long as you pay attention to a few things. Start off with a jump and an instant cap throw and dive. Roll your thumb from A to X or B to Y in order to tighten up the first 2 inputs as much as you can. Cap return jump, and at the peak of it, do a quick cap throw and dive. A visual cue to aim for all of this is this part in the wall. With the movement you're doing, this should time it perfectly so you end up on the Girder and grab it on the left side as you want. Also, you want to grab the pole high but not all the way at the top. Otherwise you will handstand jump in the wrong direction. Now that you're on the pole, hold neutral on the left stick and there won't be any risk of jumping off in the wrong direction or missing the next pole. Jump and instantly dive to land on it. Then immediately jump off again, cap dive and dive to the pole at the top. Hold right for the cap bounce and keep holding that angle when diving onto the pole. That way you buffer the next input and Mario will turn instantly. Once that happens, jump off. You should practice this part a lot, as if you jump too early, Mario will sometimes snap back and jump to the left instead of to the front. Wait a bit until Mario is at the peak, then cap dive, delay for a little bit so you're close enough to the bin, and throw Cappy, home in and dive onto the platform. This jump can be made a bit easier by doing a small vector in the air. You have to be a bit careful with the input drop caused by Cappy hitting the bin. Just try to home in instantly and figure out a good timing for the dive. Jump into the moon and grab it first frame. The movement up to this moon requires some precision and quick inputs, but it's important that you tighten up stuff this much so the cycles at the top will always be roughly the same. Because now we will capture a bullet bill to move towards the second moon, and we want it to always be in the same position. Long jump towards where the bullet bill is, cap dive and dive towards the other side, and land roughly here. Spin pound and at the peak cap dive. Do a neutral bounce and up throw. Cappy should be slightly above the bullet bill but still in its way. Just let the bullet bill fly into him and the game mechanics will do the rest. This is of course still quite precise, and especially when you're learning this, it will go wrong quite often. It is important that you also know your backups in this sub area. Make sure that you will land on top of the girder, so even if the capture fails you won't die, and with some good backup movement you won't even lose too much time. Centering the camera doesn't really help in this sub area, but no matter if you capture the bullet bill or not, try to turn it with the right control stick so you can see where you're going next. If you miss the capture, move towards the end of the girder. Throw Cappy and vault off him. It's important that you go right of the other poles here so you don't bonk your head and fall down. Then get maximum height out of everything and you should be able to make it to the other side where you can just roll and do an RCJ towards the moon. If you got the capture though, accelerate the bullet bill just like you do in sand, holding Y during the first shake, then letting go of the button right before you shake a second time. Try to move towards the moon in a straight line, and optimally you can just uncapture when you're right in front of it. It's quite easy to destroy the bullet bill on this ledge though, and it feels quite arbitrary which spots let you slide past and which don't. We will go over this in the final pace again, so if you want to learn more, check that out as well. Now, after warping to the tower, we will resume the route you're used to. There's a potential change after the pool moon depending on the hint or the cloud. We recommended going for it at this level, and if you choose to do so, make sure to skip the Metro one now. Still, of course, always remember to quickly think about whether you actually hit it or missed it, so you can grab this one here as a backup. And for the final change of this pace, let's head to People Room. This is just a small optimization, but once you get launched from the awning, cancel the upwards momentum briefly after with a cap throw and 2 quick dives to the next awning. Optimally, you want to dive below this metal platform. Overall, this isn't very difficult, but you have to get used to it so you will hit the right timing. Now, with these changes and the new route, there's many things that require a lot of practice. I would recommend doing a lot of ILs and going for at least a 415. For the final optimizations of this video, we are going to speed up stuff one more time.
I'm human, I know when I fuck up, I'm feeling defiant. Salt in my wound, feel the burns from the tears that I'm crying. I'm human.
Let's look at strats for people with a sub-hour PB now. The target SOB for this pace is 58 flat. Our first change will be the trash moon dram. We're going to get rid of the dive and just move into the moon to grab it as early as possible. This can be tight and requires some precision, but isn't too difficult with some practice. After the spin pound jump, move towards the pole and throw Cappy once you're high enough. Then instantly flick back to the stick so you start moving back to the moon and collect it. It's important that you really only move away and towards the pole as much as necessary, so you're still close enough to the moon when turning around. Also, remember to home in before grabbing the moon so the dram happens immediately after the cutscene. You still want to wait with homing in until Cappy is fully extended after the cap throw. Also, throw Cappy quite far left, because there's this stupid trash that Cappy likes to home into instead of the pole if you don't delay enough and or Cappy is too far right. Next, we're going to speed up the movement after slots. Instead of your regular roll cancel, let's try to implement a spin throw one now. This is another very precise optimization, but it's worth learning in my opinion. Spin pound and try to get as close to the pole as possible without bonking. Then, once you're in reach, spin through a roll cancel to capture the pole. What I like to do is actually turn the camera before all of this so you can see better. Keep holding right on the camera stick once the screen is black, and the camera will start turning once the fade in happens. This can feel very awkward at first, especially since you can't really see Mario very well, which makes timing and angling the spin pound difficult. I feel like you get used to that relatively soon though, and having the camera behind Mario makes aiming the spin throw for the capture easier. Just give it a try and see which method you prefer. Now for a small change in bullet building, instead of the neutral cap bounce here, we are now going to keep holding forward. This makes the cycle a bit tighter, but overall it's not that much more difficult than the other way. It does add risk to it though, because in case you don't land on the platform below if you miss the capture, killing a run here gets a lot easier. Some high level runners even get rid of the spin pound and go for 2 quick dives and a cap return jump instead. We won't look at that here, but be aware of it and maybe give it a shot if you're very good with bullet building. A very new strat that was only found a few weeks ago as of the making of this video could be useful though, so we decided to explain it here as we believe it will get much more common in the future and having a tutorial for it is a good idea. At the start of the room, aim the camera upwards immediately. This is to manipulate a bullet bill and when it should spawn. Do the jump and cap throw as usual and center the camera after doing the dive. The following movement will be quite a bit different because the camera is not in the usual angle but basically faces the poles completely from the front, so you might need to get used to the movement again. In general, the movement towards the trash should stay relatively the same though. After getting the trash moon, do a long jump as usual, but delay the cap dive quite long. You want to be close enough to the other side so that if you just do another dive, you will get a cap return jump from Cappy coming back from the cap dive. If you did the camera manipulation correctly, this bullet bill in the back should now be in a good position so that you can just do a cap jump and dive into it. Then really quickly turn Mario around and up throw immediately. If you did everything correctly, the upper bullet bill should immediately hit Cappy and you should have successfully captured the bullet bill. This strat saves almost a second over the spin pump method, so it is definitely worth it in my opinion. One more thing I want to briefly cover is how to make keeping the bullet bill alive at the end more consistent. Nobody knows with 100% certainty how it works, but here's my thought process as to what it is happening with the bullet bill and why you can sometimes make it not crash. I'm thinking it works similar to the glide-on glitch where you can gain infinite height if you angle him correctly. Basically, what you want to do is just do the normal boost like usual, and then right when doing the second boost, you want to angle the bullet bill slightly. I think this is what gives the bullet bill just a teeny tiny bit more height if done correctly, barely making it possible for the bullet bill to not break at the ledge. Also, one thing I noticed is that it's much more consistent for some reason if you don't do the second boost as early as possible, but delay it a little bit. As already said previously, this is certainly not a 100% consistent strat, but maximizing the chance of getting it will save more time on average. Alright, on to the next changes. We will learn some new movement after the warp as well. Cap throw, dive and spin pound. Now do an up throw roll cancel into a triple jump. This way you can go all the way to the trash bin without cap diving. Back to the triple jump, then once you're close enough, spin throw to open it and dive onto the platform. Again, careful with input drops here. I personally don't like this movement after the warp very much, but most people use this at a high level, so see how well it works for you. The movement I use is more similar to what you do in Night Metro here, by making use of a spin pound, a roll cancel and a triple jump out of it. We won't look at this in detail in this video, but if you're struggling with the other method, you might want to give this one a shot. Now, after diving into this moon, pay attention to where the girder below you is. If it's in the right spot, you can actually go for a spin pound and an instant roll cancel to the other side. Make sure to home in with Cappy so he returns as early as possible, then spin throw to capture the pylon. If the girder is in a bad position, just cap dive and dive like before. When collecting the trash moon, try to grab it as high as possible now. Then, when diving into the moon below, also try to land on top so you have as much height as possible. Now, simply cap throw and dive to the building and remove the cap bounce. Roll boost and do a spin throw roll cancel into the pylon. This is actually quite easy to do as long as you pay attention to your height when collecting the moons. For the final optimization, let's jump ahead to the cafe moon. Throw Cappy, dive onto the railing and walk off it. Try to cut the corner tight and keep aiming for the entrance. You want to land right inside it. Now, to avoid being stunned, buffer A or B once you're close to the ground and jump in. Alright, that's it for the changes, but of course, before we're done here, let's go through all of it once again and look at small and invisible time save along the way. ask yourself the following questions. Do you take a good line towards the Girder entry, and do you do the final jump and the cap throw as early as possible so you don't waste unnecessary time being in the air? Do you home in early for both drams so you capture instantly after the moon cutscenes? Do you turn the camera to avoid lag when going down the wire? Do you land on the awning very high up so you're being launched higher? Do you do a good camera manip for bench moon? Do you take good lines from the Girder moon all the way to slots? Do you spin throw once possible while still hitting all 4 slots in the first cycle and then grab the moon close to the exit? Do you keep all your momentum from the pole after slots and take good lines towards Bullet Billding? Do you capture the bullet bill as close to its spawn as you can? Remember to keep moving towards it as much as you're able to while still consistently making the cycle. Do you tighten up the inputs for the tower climb as much as possible? Do you go for bullseye from the highest point possible so you're spending maximum time in ground pound state? Do you take a tight way to people room so you land inside the door and not before it? Do you activate the lever moon with a very low jump and cap throw, and do you dive right after Mario has turned? Do you tighten up the inputs for the cap dives and dives at the end so you don't gain unnecessary height from the awning launches? Do you fully zoom out on the map for both warps? As you can see, Day Metro is packed with these very tiny optimizations. Be aware of them, and a gold of 411 or better should be doable. That's what I would recommend for our SOB goal. And that's it pretty much for Day Metro. This was another massive episode. Liking, sharing and subscribing is much appreciated. As always, thanks a lot to the team working on these videos. That's Eden checking the script for mistakes, Stealths and our new member Pandan recording clips, Lupus writing the script, and Zack in the Box doing all the editing. I'm Danster and I'm helping and supporting wherever I can and it's needed. So for example, I help Eden with the dishes, cook Flavor in his favorite meal, or write Lupus's tax return because he's too lazy to do it himself. Okay, enough of this. See you next time for Change of Pace for Snow Kingdom.